So this week, I can't even really say it's a mixed bag. It's actually a little bit challenging. So to help us through all the craziness, we have a fantastic special guest that's coming right up. Hi everybody, welcome to the Mainly Moonology Podcast. Today I am with someone who you may not know, but actually you know her work. Her name is Kim Fairminer, and I'll give you her kind of official potted biog, and then I'll tell you how Kim shows up in my life. So Kim Fairminer is a respected astrologer, writer, and witch. With over 25 years of magical practice, she's helped countless individuals achieve their goals, navigate challenges, and live their best lives. Don't you love that? Affectionately known as a rockstar astrologer, Kim's readers, clients, and students praise her deep spiritual insights, delivered with honesty, humor, and uncanny accuracy. Well, we're looking for a bit of that this week, Kim. A down-to-earth guide to the esoteric arts, Kim shares her expertise through horoscopes, consultations, courses, books, and passionately shares knowledge of astrology, witchcraft, dreams, and magical ritual. She's done so much, including lots of very witchy sounding things like being the high priestess of the Circle Coven. Is that right? Wow. Yeah. Kim is formally trained, but, she's also just an intuitive, I think, at it from what I can gather. And you can find her at kimfairminer.com. Kim, welcome to the Mainly Moonology Podcast. Before I actually let you speak, one more thing. This is how Kim shows up in my life. Kim basically helps me with this Moonology diary every year, because as you can imagine, in the Moonology diary there are about 20,000 possible mistakes and Kim reads it for me and makes sure I haven't been dozing off or writing about the wrong year or whatever. I could not do the diary without Kim, I'm sure. If she suddenly decided she didn't want to do it anymore, I don't know. I'd have to go hunting high and low for someone with her sensibilities and so on. So welcome to the show, Kim. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me and letting me get a sneak peek at your Moonology diary every year. It's always a great delight when that lands in my inbox. I just, love it.
While we're promoting it, there's the one for 2025, again, stamped with Kim's. We call her my astro editor because I have an editor at Hay House, like just a regular editor. And then we talk about Kim, my astro editor. So Kim, thanks again for all that you do. It's amazing. Let's dive straight into the astrology for this week.
What's in the stars?
We've had a quick look at it. We've got two quite difficult things. We've got Venus clashing with Neptune and then Mercury clashing with Saturn. So, okay, the first aspect that we're going to look at this week is between Venus and Neptune. Now, as you may know, Venus, love, abundance, relating, Neptune, dreams, delusion, disappointment, and they are clashing. So there could be a little bit of disappointment around romance or to do with the flow of abundance in your life. What have you got, Kim? Tell us about this, which actually is at the really start of the week on Monday, I think.
Yeah, it's a difficult combination, I think, because Venus and Neptune, they're kind of interested in the same things in a way, creating harmony and connection. And you've got Venus in Sagittarius. She wears her heart on her sleeve. She puts herself out there. She's quite sort of, bold and carefree. And then it feels like those hopes and dreams could potentially slip through her fingers and just kind of turn to sand almost, or or maybe mist is a better metaphor for Neptune in Pisces. It just kind of things heat up and turn to steam and come to nothing. And that, as you said, it can be really disappointing. And it's those high hopes, that vision, that sense of hope and optimism, the things that we want to build, the things that we strive for in our connections with other people, particularly romantic relationships. This is like the person that you've had on the pedestal, just kind of doing something, and you're just feeling let down and just quite bummed. It's a bit of a bummer aspect, I think.
It is a bit of a
Yeah,
bummer aspect. Um,
yeah.
yeah, I'm just looking ahead though, so people don't get too disheartened. Actually, within about 12 days, so less than 2 weeks later, Venus, having moved into Capricorn, will be harmonizing or sextiling Neptune. So, it's not necessarily forever, could be a temporary disappointment, could be a sort of a deflation. But then as Venus moves into Capricorn, maybe it's going to become a little bit easier to get things back on an even keel. Am I being too optimistic, Kim?
I think we all need a dose of reality in relationships. I mean, it's not kind of what you sign up for at the start. At the start, your heart's all aflutter, and this person can do no wrong. And then, like, you get to know them, and they don't put the toilet seat down, or they drink out of the milk carton like directly, like they do these heinous things, and then some. So it's this kind of dance between like the gritty reality of being a human in a relationship with another human, and the reason you first came together to begin with, and kind of working through those peaks and troughs, those giddy highs and those terrifying lows. Like that's the kind of the roller coaster of a long-term relationship. So sometimes you want to get off the ride, and like that's fine, but sometimes the ride can be exciting, so like that's why we
Yeah.
stay. Yeah, highs and lows, and yeah, terrifying
Yeah,
lows.
and it definitely can be a week of highs and lows this week, or probably more lows to be completely honest. But it's sort of like a week to try and get through, because the next aspect to look at is the one that comes a bit later in the week, which is Mercury square Saturn. So why don't you take it away, start to break it down for us? What can people expect this week, and what can they do to mitigate the slightly difficult energies around this week? It's a full moon week too, by the way.
Yeah. It's really all happening, isn't it? I don't like, they're squares, they're challenging. There is a clash between like those interpersonal planets, the Mercury and the Venus. So we've got how we communicate and also how we relate to others. Those are the sort of, core purposes of those two planets. And then they're both kind of bumping into Saturn and Neptune. They're in Pisces, and Saturn's like really digging his heels in there too. So he is not in the mood for pleasant conversation. So I think Mercury gets the kind of worse end of the stick this week. So that could be conversations that you may feel that, we're talking Mercury in Sagittarius. So this is a Mercury that might blurt something out or be looking to negotiate more freedom than what they have at the moment. And Saturn's like that authority figure, somebody that gives permission and maybe sort of, gatekeeps it away. So conversations with authority need to be handled perhaps a little bit more carefully and thoughtfully than Sagittarius may like to do, because Sagittarius is a happy-go-lucky sign. They just sort of work on the assumption that, the road will rise up to meet them, and that may not happen. Saturn may have other plans. So that's definitely one to watch. With the Neptune and
Before we move on from it, can I just chime in a bit here as well?
oh, sure.
I love what you said. I think that's absolutely right. So yeah, so we've got this Mercury. So Mercury, obviously, communications, as you've said, in Sag, as you've said. So happy-go-lucky, cheerful, and optimistic. And then it's meeting nasty old Saturn, who even though I actually quite like Saturn when Saturn's in a good mood, Saturn can be like the difficult headmaster, or the cop who's caught you touching your phone while you're driving or something. And so I suppose what I want to say is, this week, if you do find yourself butting up against authority, again, as Kim has touched on, but if you find yourself butting up against authority, just remember you are probably not going to get very far by railing against it. Would you agree with that? That, you know, you kind of almost need to be a bit cleverer than that, because Mercury squaring Saturn, it's kind of a brick wall in my opinion, even though everything passes and it won't last forever, and it may even be a fleeting thing. And it's not just about getting pulled over by the cops. It can be, you know, your partner being really intractable, or your neighbor just being really difficult, or whatever. Would you agree with that, Kim, that there's not that much room for maneuver?
No, not at all, because that Saturn's just he's just stationing direct. So he's like kind of like dug in. He's like not moving. He's got like really heavy boots on, and he's just like basically saying, "Come on, try me." He's not in the mood for it. And you know, Saturn in Pisces, it's a water sign. It is sort of moody, and not in a good mood.
Yeah. And actually, let's talk about the fact that then Saturn's going to go direct straight after that Mercury-Saturn clash. So, I mean, in a way, that could be the unlocking of the wheels. You know, like it is a few days later. It's actually 3 days later we get the Mercury-Saturn clash on November 13, and then on the 16th, Saturn starts to go direct. So, you know, so Saturn's been retrograde, which it is retrograde for a very long time every year. It's going forward again. The image I'm getting, for better or worse, is, and it actually does apply, because Mercury, you know, is about cars. And I'm getting this image of, you know, like when, if you're driving fast on an icy road, which we have a bit of those here in the UK, we probably have them in Australia as well in some parts of the country. And then if you start skidding, which is an awful thing, and then finally your wheels are a bit sort of stuck, maybe they lock up, and then finally you hit back to traction. And even though, you know, I'm not 100% sure the aspect of Mercury square Saturn, because it is a bit more of a loggerhead thing, but it's sort of that thing of you might be able to get traction later. So maybe it's one of those weeks to, you know, don't cut what you can untie. If you're in a difficult situation with someone, don't just throw all your toys out of the pram and, you know, just lose your temper, basically. Try and get through it and understand it's a difficult week, and try and be logical, because Saturn really likes logic, and be grown up, mature, you know, think long term. What do I want? I mean, to me, all that is sort of a way to get around it. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think Mercury in Sagittarius is kind of inclined for those instant results. It wants to kind of fix the problem and move on quickly. But Saturn's like, well, no, we're going to sit with this. We're going to delve into it a little bit more. And maybe, possibly, that could be to Mercury's benefit in the long term. But that Mercury is being asked to sort of slow down, think about it a bit more. Not expect those quick moving instant results.
Yeah. And you know, also it's just a kind of a headache, isn't it? Mercury square Saturn. It's a bit of a headache.
Mental pressure.
Yeah, mental pressure. Actually, it can also be people feeling really down in the dumps, you know, because Saturn's kind of a depressive when it's, you know, in a bad state, and it's kind of in a bad state when it's being squared by Mercury. So, you know, it can be feeling a bit low. If you're feeling low, try and, you know, remind yourself it's just something I'm going through. Use your spiritual practices. What would you suggest, Kim? Because obviously you've got all your magical stuff about you. What would you suggest for anyone who does feel a bit low, or like they're being picked on,
I think they should getting outside and getting moving. Sagittarius is a fire sign. It wants to be active. And if you run into some kind of roadblock, or you feel like you're in a mental rut, like the cure is to sort of get moving. So go for a bit of a walk, get outside and see the big picture. Like, because if you're inside, like you're in your mind, in your own four walls, like everything kind of seems small and shrinks. But when you can see far away to the horizon, and you get some momentum and some motion in the face of that, standstill Saturn, like that's going to kind of free things up and hopefully introduce some extra possibilities and ideas.
Yeah,
From
I
your
love that. And
environment.
yeah. And so if you are listening to this and you have been having a bad time, you know, if you're listening to it at night and you can't go outside because it's nighttime or it's freezing or whatever, maybe just go to your window, whatever the best vantage point you have, to see as far as you can. Because, like Kim's saying, Mercury and Sag, it wants to see the big picture, it needs perspective, and it's really about getting some kind of, vision. And then, sometimes when you do that, even if you can get outside, definitely get outside, but it sort of helps you, realize where you are, and it just brings everything to perspective. So I love that advice. I love that advice. Kim, can we just talk about Saturn going direct as well? For people who don't know, Saturn is really the planet of challenges and lessons and blockages and obstacles, and is like, like I said, the tough school mother master, or the crone. It's father time. And so as Saturn goes through your chart, it will either it can help build you up, but it can also kind of help tear you down. So it's been retrograde for a while. So with Saturn retrograde, it's often a time for tearing the old down. So we've been through that period of tearing the old stuff down. So think about what you've torn down in your life. And now as Saturn starts to move forward again, it's going to be time to build. What do you think, Miss Kim?
Yeah, I've got a bit of a love-hate relationship with Saturn. I think most astrologically aware people do, because it asks you to do hard things. It asks you to like commit and be disciplined and, have experiences and gain that mastery. And I think when it's retrograde, you kind of have to kind of dig deep internally to work out what those lessons are. Like, it's not always obvious what Saturn teaches you. But when it moves direct, you might discover, oh, that's what I learned through this terrible trial. That's what I learned through being pushed to the limit in my studies or my job, or like, by taking on this big challenge. Like, it almost feels like a lightening of the load. The load is still there, but because you've like built your muscles, it's actually easier to carry, and you can go further because of the difficult experiencing, carry it lighter and more easily. It's just
Yeah.
like you don't wake up one day and go, hi, I'm going to run a marathon. Like, you've got to train and then like do all that every day, eating right, and making sure you don't pull a hamstring and all that stuff. And then through that hard work, you can do it. And that sense of achievement that you get from setting that goal, working towards it, and actually doing it is kind of the amazing feeling that I would like to get from Saturn moving direct. And this is actually pinging my chart in a big way. So fingers crossed that this is a moment where I unleash my own mastery.
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely the most optimistic take possible on Saturn. And we should also, give a nod to the less optimistic one, which is, Saturn does challenge us, as Kim has said, and it is about, I mean, in some ways, Saturn retrograde almost slightly gives us a bit of a break, because instead of just plodding relentlessly forward and forcing us to face all these effing facts, which is what Saturn does, it's been going backwards. So we've had sort of second chances to learn lessons. We've had a second bite at the cherry of things that we kind of wanted to do. And now it's sort of like, okay, but here we go, because now you're ready, and now we're going to start to we're going back to class in a way. So yeah, and I think as astrologers and people who work in healing and so on, it's a very, and anyone who's listening who's in that category, it's a very interesting thing with Saturn in Pisces, because Pisces is very much the mystical sign of the zodiac, and Saturn is kind of the law and the authority. So I'm really interested to see where this goes for all of us in terms of being taken more seriously, maybe more rules and regulations as Saturn moves through Pisces. Have you got any thoughts on that, on the overall Saturn in Pisces big picture?
I think that spiritual boundaries and those ethical issues are really coming out increasingly. So there's
Yeah.
been kind of like I think a contraction. Maybe people are looking back towards more traditional spiritual paths, and like there's a wide array of those philosophy and religions and, techniques and things from, many cultures, rather than that kind of sense of pushing forward and innovating. Yeah, it's, well, like, what did they used to do? What can we learn from the old ways? So not all of them fit, and I think Pisces as a, mutable sign's got some flexibility there. So, yeah, we can play with those boundaries and, get rid of stuff that doesn't quite work now. But, there's still a lot of human experience from, before the internet, like going way, way back, to that traditional knowledge, herbalism, things that, have been passed down within families as well. That kind of it's intangible in a way.
Yeah.
I guess so. That's the conflict of Saturn in Pisces, is the intangibility of that belief with the, as you said, the facts, the things
Yeah.
that are
Yeah.
thrust in your face. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting time because then obviously Saturn's going to, keep moving forward and is eventually going to meet up with Neptune, which I think is happening in 2026, if I've got my dates right, which I very rarely do, but I'm pretty sure it's 2026. And, on the one hand, it's very much about, for me, Saturn and Neptune is what you need for manifesting. But on the other hand, one thing I'm thinking as we talk is, all these crazy people you see on TikTok and Instagram saying, just intone this one note for 3 hours a day and you can manifest anything. And it's sort of like, I think we're going to be sorting the wheat from the chaff on all that as well. But, time will tell.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed. There are some wild ideas being peddled out there for
Yeah, which kind
yeah,
of
likes
dilute
and dollars.
everything.
Mm.
Yeah, okay. That is brilliant. So obviously now everyone's feeling hopefully not too depressed, is understanding it might be a challenging week, but be responsible, see the big picture, understand it's all part of a big cycle and hopefully we can all get through it. So now let's talk about the moonology for the week ahead.
Where's the moon?
All right, Kim. So what we have this week in my trusty Moonology diary, which you edited, is on November the 15th, everywhere except Sydney or Australia, where it's the 16th, we have the full moon in the sign of Taurus, okay? So full moon in Taurus, I'll give you the date. So in LA, it's November 15 at 1:28 p.m. New York, it's November 15 at 4:28 p.m. London, it's November 15 at 9:28 p.m., which is actually quite nice for those of us in London because it will actually probably be dark by then. Sydney, November 16 at 8:28 a.m. Full moon in Taurus, and the keywords are electric, change-making, breaking with the past, and radical. And so even before I look at what I've written and Kim's edited for this full moon, we know that Uranus is going to be involved because they are all very much Uranus keywords. So maybe it's my imagination, but I feel that as I've been writing these diaries since 2019, Uranus, the planet of electricity and electrocution, of change and radical turnarounds, has become more and more triggered. Maybe it's just the times we're living in. When Uranus is triggered, life goes a bit crazy. It's little wonder Uranus is the planet of madness. At the time of this lunation, so this full moon this week, Uranus is being triggered by the full moon. In fact, at the time of the full moon, the moon and Uranus are only 1 degree apart. So in other words, now is the time for a radical break with the past. What have you got to say about that, Miss Kim?
Look, it's an exciting one, isn't it? It's going to be like one of I sort my lunations into like those ones and then like just regular ones. I think this is one of those full moons.
Yeah.
So it's exciting. Uranus is a really exciting planet. It is not business as usual. So even if your life sort of, keeps chugging on as, you like, the people around you could be like having all sorts of wild things. And like that is the collective energy of this moon. So I think there's an opportunity for people to make positive change in whatever area of life that they're kind of feeling like perhaps some kind of low rumbling soul discontent, like, perhaps you're a bit bored in your job, or, you're feeling like, you really need a holiday. Like it's kind of like a trigger full moon to get out there and do the thing. It's a little the image that I get, like it's like a full moon with its fork stuck in the PowerPoint. Like it's got like mega rays coming out of it, and exciting things will happen.
Love that. So I think the message for this full moon is just, break with the past as much as you can, accept that, sometimes the unexpected happens, and then you just have to deal with it. Do we agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's in Taurus. You've got to be practical about whatever life brings you. And, you've been alive this far. You've got a whole range of skills and resources to draw upon, and you've totally got this.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So now I'm actually going to, we've talked for so long today. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight to a card for the card of the week.
A message from the Moonology Oracle.
Normally I do a reader question, but we've already talked for so long. Let's just do a card of the week for anybody who's listening. What do we need to know? Are you ready, Miss Kim, for the card of the week?
Oh, I'm excited.
Okay, interesting. What are your priorities? So basically, this week, whatever is going on in your life, just remember what your priorities are, because it is going to be a challenging week. Full moon, Venus square, Neptune, Mercury square, Saturn. If you keep your priorities straight, everything can be fine. All right, Kim, thank you so much for being with us today. Can you please let people know where they can find you?
Sure. The best place to get in touch with me is through my website, kimfairminer.com. I'm also on the socials on Facebook, Instagram, and also Threads. Having a play in that space as well. I'm hoping to have some new blog posts out, over the next few weeks. So if you're into sort of, magic, witchcraft, mediums, I'm going to have some fun stuff up about that. And yeah, then we sort of start to roll into 2025. So join on my mailing list, and I don't know, we'll see what else I come up with. Probably some wild ideas with that full moon.
We'll put the link below in the show notes, but just in case anyone's listening as they're driving or whatever, it's Kim, K-I-M, Fairminer, F-A-I-R-M-I-N-E-R, kimfairminer.com. All right, Kim, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been very interesting, and let's be in touch.
Indeed. Thank you so much for having me on, and I hope you and all your listeners have an amazing week.